Introduction. There is a stage in adult life when external success no longer guarantees internal stability. By the time individuals reach their late 30s, 40s, or early 50s, they have accumulated experience, responsibility, and often a quiet layer of fatigue that cannot be explained by physical effort alone. Careers may be established, families may be growing, social roles are defined. Yet many people at this stage report an invisible depletion, an internal heaviness that does not correspond to their achievements. This depletion is rarely a matter of capability. It is rarely intelligence. It is rarely opportunity. It is energy. Not energy in the mystical sense, and not the exaggerated optimism promoted by popular culture. Rather, psychological energy. The measurable interplay between thought patterns, emotional regulation, physiological stress responses, and interpersonal influence. This internal energy determines how clearly a person thinks under pressure, how effectively they communicate, how resiliently they recover from setbacks, and how confidently they enter uncertain situations. Positive energy, in its mature form, is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not rely on forced enthusiasm. It is steady. It is deliberate. It is composed. It is the quiet strength that others instinctively trust. By midlife, many individuals begin to recognize a pattern. Two professionals with similar skills can produce dramatically different outcomes. Two leaders with comparable resources can create entirely different team cultures. Two parents facing similar challenges can raise children with contrasting emotional climates. The difference is not usually strategy alone. It is the internal state from which strategy is executed. Human beings continuously transmit emotional signals through tone, posture, timing, eye contact, and micro-expressions. Neuroscience confirms that emotional states are contagious. Mirror neurons in the brain allow individuals to absorb and reflect the internal conditions of those around them. A chronically anxious leader produces anxious teams. A calm, grounded individual stabilizes a tense environment without speaking at length. This transmission is energy in action. Yet most adults are never taught how to manage it. They are taught productivity. They are taught competition. They are taught technical skill. Rarely are they taught how to maintain internal alignment when external demands multiply. Over time, unmanaged stress accumulates. Disappointments that were never fully processed become subtle resentment. Repeated exposure to urgency reshapes the nervous system into a constant state of alertness. Digital overload fragments attention. Conversations are rushed. Sleep is compromised. Reflection becomes rare. The result is not dramatic collapse. It is gradual erosion. Decision-making becomes reactive rather than strategic. Communication carries an undercurrent of irritation. Motivation fluctuates unpredictably. Personal presence weakens. Opportunities feel heavier rather than exciting. Many individuals assume this is an inevitable feature of aging. It is not. It is the predictable outcome of unmanaged psychological energy. Your positive energy is the foundation upon which your clarity, confidence, and credibility are built. It determines whether you approach challenges with curiosity or defensiveness. It shapes whether others perceive you as stable or volatile. It influences whether you inspire trust or hesitation. This book is not about superficial positivity. It does not encourage denial of hardship. It does not promise unrealistic transformation through affirmations alone. Instead, it examines positive energy as a disciplined practice rooted in cognitive science, emotional intelligence, behavioral psychology, and mature self-awareness. It explores how internal narratives influence hormonal responses, how chronic stress alters perception, how unresolved emotional patterns drain vitality, and how deliberate recalibration restores authority over one's internal state. The objective is not temporary motivation. It is sustainable composure. For the adult reader between 35 and 50, this subject is particularly relevant. At this stage, influence expands. Professional roles often include leadership. Family members look to you for stability. Younger colleagues observe your responses to pressure. Your internal state no longer affects only you. It shapes environments. When your energy is scattered, so is your impact. When your energy is grounded, your presence becomes magnetic. The chapters that follow will examine the architecture of energy, how it is formed, how it is depleted, and how it is restored. We will analyze thought discipline, emotional processing, boundary management, physiological regulation, and the psychology of influence. Each section builds progressively, moving from awareness to structured transformation. Positive energy is not an accident. It is not genetic privilege. It is not personality type. It is cultivated stability. And in a world that increasingly rewards speed, noise, and reaction, cultivated stability has become a rare and powerful advantage. Let us begin with the foundation, understanding how thought patterns silently generate the emotional climate in which you live. Chapter 1. By the time a person reaches the middle decades of life, thinking has become largely automatic. Patterns formed in youth about success, failure, trust, security, and self-worth operate quietly beneath awareness. Most individuals believe they are responding to circumstances objectively, yet in reality they are responding to interpretations shaped years, sometimes decades, earlier. The quality of those interpretations determines the quality of their internal energy. Energy, in the psychological sense, is not mysterious. It is the outcome of cognitive activity interacting with emotional and physiological systems. A single thought can accelerate the heart rate, tighten muscles, alter breathing, and change posture within seconds. The body does not wait for confirmation. It reacts to perception. When the mind signals threat, inadequacy, or loss of control, the nervous system prepares for defense. When the mind signals possibility, competence, or safety, the nervous system stabilizes. Over months and years, repeated signals create a baseline. That baseline becomes what others experience as your presence. If your habitual thoughts are critical, catastrophic, or distrustful, your baseline energy will carry tension. Even in neutral situations, your responses will lean toward caution or irritation. Conversely, if your habitual thoughts are structured, solution-focused, and proportionate, your baseline energy will carry steadiness. Pressure will still exist, but it will not dominate your reactions. The distinction is subtle yet decisive. Consider two professionals facing identical feedback from a superior. The first immediately interprets the feedback as evidence of inadequacy. Internally, the thought emerges, "I am losing my edge." That single interpretation triggers a cascade: defensiveness, self-doubt, perhaps quiet resentment. The body tightens. The voice changes slightly. Sleep that evening is fragmented by rumination. The next day's decisions are made from a position of insecurity. The second professional interprets the same feedback differently. There is room for refinement. The body remains regulated. Curiosity replaces defensiveness. Questions are asked calmly. Adjustments are implemented. Energy is preserved rather than drained. The external event was identical. The internal narrative was not. This difference is not about personality optimism. It is about disciplined cognition. By midlife, most people have developed automatic explanatory styles. Psychologists describe these styles as habitual ways of attributing cause and permanence to events. Some individuals internalize setbacks as personal and permanent. Others view them as specific and adjustable. The first pattern drains energy consistently. The second conserves it. The brain, efficient by design, strengthens whatever pathways are used most frequently. Repeated self-criticism strengthens neural networks associated with threat detection. Repeated balanced evaluation strengthens networks associated with executive control and emotional regulation. Over time, thinking patterns become biologically embedded. What feels like just the way I am is often the result of reinforced circuitry. For adults between 35 and 50, this realization is empowering rather than discouraging. At this stage, intellectual maturity allows for observation of one's own mental habits without excessive dramatization. You have seen enough of life to recognize that emotional reactions are not always accurate reflections of reality. You have likely witnessed moments when you overestimated risk or underestimated your resilience. These experiences provide evidence that thought patterns can be examined rather than obeyed. The first step in cultivating positive energy is therefore not enthusiasm. It is awareness. Observe the internal commentary that runs quietly during routine moments. Notice how you interpret delays, disagreements, or uncertainty. Do you assume incompetence in others? Do you assume impending failure in yourself? Do you anticipate rejection before it occurs? These assumptions consume energy long before any real outcome is determined. Many adults carry cognitive distortions that formed in earlier environments. Competitive schools, demanding households, volatile workplaces. Hypervigilance may once have been adaptive. It may have protected you or driven achievement. But when sustained indefinitely, it exhausts the nervous system. Chronic overthinking is one of the most significant energy drains in this age group. Responsibilities are broader. Aging parents, financial planning, career stability, children's futures. The mind attempts to control uncertainty by rehearsing possibilities repeatedly. Yet rehearsal without resolution does not produce preparedness. It produces fatigue. There is a measurable cost to this pattern. Persistent rumination elevates cortisol levels, disrupts sleep cycles, and impairs concentration. Decision-making becomes slower. Creativity narrows. Interactions carry subtle irritability because cognitive resources are already depleted. Positive energy cannot coexist with mental overcrowding. To reclaim energy, one must introduce structure into thought processes. Structure does not eliminate complexity. It organizes it. When confronted with a concern, disciplined thinking asks 3 questions. What is within my influence? What evidence supports my fear? What action, if any, is required now? These questions shift the brain from emotional reactivity to analytical engagement. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and reasoning, begins to regulate the amygdala's threat response. The result is immediate conservation of energy. Another significant component of mental energy is narrative identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are at this stage of life. Some individuals unconsciously adopt a narrative of decline. My best years are behind me. Opportunities are fewer now. I am too established to pivot. Such narratives quietly narrow behavior. They reduce experimentation. They dampen initiative. Energy contracts. Alternatively, a narrative of consolidation and refinement expands behavior. I have experience that younger professionals do not. My judgment is sharper. I can choose deliberately rather than impulsively. This narrative does not deny aging. It reframes it as advantage. Energy expands because possibility remains open. Your internal story influences posture, tone, and willingness to engage. Others detect this immediately. People are drawn toward those who carry composed forward momentum, regardless of age. It is important to clarify that positive energy is not naive optimism. It does not ignore risk. It does not deny genuine difficulty. Mature positivity integrates realism with agency. It acknowledges constraints while focusing on effective response. For example, economic uncertainty may threaten professional stability. An undisciplined mind might spiral into catastrophic projection, job loss, financial collapse, diminished status. A disciplined mind recognizes uncertainty, yet redirects attention toward preparation, skill development, networking, savings adjustment. The emotional tone shifts from helplessness to measured readiness. Energy follows focus. If focus remains fixed on uncontrollable outcomes, energy drains. If focus shifts toward constructive action, energy stabilizes. Self-talk plays a decisive role in this process. Many accomplished adults speak to themselves with a level of harshness they would never use with a colleague. Minor errors trigger disproportionate internal criticism. Over time, this tone erodes confidence. The nervous system does not distinguish between external and internal hostility. It reacts to both as threat. Replacing harsh self-talk with precise evaluation restores energy. Precision differs from indulgence. It might sound like this. The presentation lacked clarity in Section 2. I will revise the data flow. This statement identifies improvement without attacking identity. Identity-based criticism. I am incompetent is energetically destructive because it offers no solution. Boundaries in thinking are equally important. Mature adults often assume responsibility for circumstances beyond their control. They mentally replay conversations, attempting to correct others' reactions long after the interaction has ended. This mental extension of responsibility depletes reserves. Clear cognitive boundaries acknowledge influence without assuming ownership of others' emotions. As awareness increases, you may notice that certain environments consistently alter your energy. Meetings characterized by chronic negativity, social circles centered on complaint, digital platforms saturated with outrage. These contexts amplify reactive thinking. While complete avoidance may be unrealistic, conscious limitation is powerful. Exposure shapes cognition. Cognition shapes energy. The cultivation of positive energy therefore begins with deliberate input selection. What you read, watch, and discuss becomes mental material. For a 35-50 audience, this principle is particularly significant because time is limited. Every hour spent absorbing unproductive content is an hour not invested in strengthening clarity or resilience. Reflection is another underutilized tool. Many adults move from task to task without structured pause, yet without reflection, patterns remain invisible. A brief daily review, identifying moments of unnecessary reactivity and moments of composed response, gradually sharpens awareness. This practice is not indulgent introspection. It is performance calibration. Energy management also requires physiological alignment. Sleep, movement, and nutrition directly influence cognitive stability. While this book emphasizes psychological energy, the mind and body operate as a unified system. Sleep deprivation magnifies negative interpretation. Sedentary habits reduce stress tolerance. Nutritional instability affects mood regulation. Mature positive energy integrates physical stewardship with cognitive discipline. As this chapter concludes, it is essential to recognize that change does not occur through a single insight. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition. New patterns must be practiced consistently before they feel natural. Initially, disciplined thinking may require conscious effort. Over time, it becomes baseline. The objective is not to eliminate all negative thoughts. That would be unrealistic and unnecessary. The objective is to prevent unexamined thoughts from governing behavior and draining vitality. When thought patterns are clarified and regulated, emotional steadiness follows. When emotional steadiness becomes consistent, presence transforms. Others experience reliability rather than volatility. Opportunities are approached with curiosity rather than fear. Decisions emerge from analysis rather than impulse. Positive energy, at its foundation, is organized thinking sustained over time. In the next chapter, we will examine how emotional processing either amplifies or obstructs this organized thinking, and how unprocessed emotional residue quietly undermines even the most disciplined mind. Chapter 2. If disciplined thinking forms the architecture of positive energy, emotional processing determines whether that architecture remains stable under pressure. Many adults in their midlife years possess intellectual clarity, yet remain internally burdened. They can analyze situations rationally, but their reactions are intensified by emotional residue accumulated over time. Unprocessed emotion is one of the most underestimated drains on psychological energy. Unlike immediate reactions, which arise and dissipate, unprocessed emotions linger beneath awareness. They influence tone, facial expression, patience, and interpretation without announcing their presence. A disagreement at work may feel disproportionately threatening, not because of its objective impact, but because it activates older experiences of dismissal or failure. A minor criticism from a spouse may provoke outsized defensiveness because it touches a deeper fear of inadequacy. By 35 or 40, few individuals are reacting solely to the present moment. They are responding to layered memory. The human nervous system is designed to remember emotionally charged experiences with greater intensity than neutral ones. This design once served survival, remembering danger increased caution. However, in modern professional and relational environments, this same mechanism often produces chronic vigilance. The body reacts to psychological discomfort as though it were physical threat. Muscles tighten, breathing becomes shallow, attention narrows. Over time, this pattern becomes habitual. When emotional responses are not examined, they solidify into temperament. A person begins to describe themselves as short-tempered, guarded, or overly cautious, assuming these traits are fixed. In reality, they are adaptive responses that were never recalibrated. Positive energy requires emotional integration, not suppression. Suppression is common among high-functioning adults. Responsibilities are heavy. There appears to be little time for introspection. It feels efficient to dismiss discomfort and continue performing. Yet suppressed emotion does not disappear. It relocates. It manifests as irritability, fatigue, cynicism, or detachment. Consider the executive who prides himself on composure, yet experiences chronic exhaustion. His days are efficient. His decisions are strategic, but unresolved resentment from earlier professional betrayals colors his interactions. He assumes hidden motives where none exist. He withholds trust reflexively. The cognitive effort required to maintain this guarded stance consumes energy continuously. Similarly, a parent who carries unresolved disappointment from unrealized ambitions may project subtle urgency onto their children. The emotional undercurrent communicates anxiety rather than encouragement. Relationships feel strained, though intentions are positive. In both cases, emotional residue alters energetic presence. Processing emotion does not require dramatic confrontation. It requires recognition, articulation, and reframing. Recognition begins with naming. Many adults struggle to label their internal states precisely. They default to broad terms such as stressed or tired. Yet, beneath stress may be fear, disappointment, grief, or anger. Precision in language clarifies response. For example, identifying a feeling as disappointment rather than general stress invites a different action. Disappointment may require recalibrating expectations or grieving an outcome. Stress, by contrast, suggests urgency and workload. Without accurate labeling, the mind selects ineffective solutions. Articulation can occur privately through writing or reflection. When experiences are translated into language, the prefrontal cortex engages more actively, moderating emotional intensity. Research consistently shows that structured reflection reduces physiological arousal. The act of describing an emotion reduces its grip. Reframing follows articulation. Reframing is not denial. It is contextualization. A professional setback may initially feel like evidence of decline. Reframed, it becomes feedback within a long career trajectory. A strained conversation may feel like rejection. Reframed, it becomes misalignment in communication styles. Reframing restores proportion. Another significant component of emotional energy is forgiveness, not necessarily reconciliation, but release. Many individuals in their 40s and 50s carry quiet grievances. Some stem from professional betrayal, others from family dynamics. While justified anger may have existed at the time, prolonged attachment to resentment perpetuates physiological stress. The body cannot sustain indignation without cost. Forgiveness in this context is not moral absolution. It is strategic energy conservation. When you release the expectation that the past should have unfolded differently, mental space becomes available. Emotional neutrality replaces ongoing rehearsal of injustice. This does not happen instantly. It requires deliberate decision-making. It may involve acknowledging that certain outcomes will never feel fair. Mature positive energy accepts this reality without allowing it to dominate the present. Boundaries also protect emotional energy. Many adults feel compelled to respond immediately to every demand: professional emails, family concerns, social obligations. Constant responsiveness signals availability but erodes recovery time. Emotional systems require intervals of disengagement. Without them, irritability increases. Establishing boundaries does not require aggression. It requires clarity. Clear communication about availability, expectations, and limitations reduces internal conflict. When boundaries are absent, individuals often experience resentment toward obligations they voluntarily accepted. This resentment becomes another hidden drain. It is equally important to examine comparison. In midlife, comparison shifts. It is no longer about early career progress. It becomes about accumulated status, financial milestones, physical vitality, or children's achievements. Digital platforms amplify this tendency. Observing curated success narratives can subtly diminish satisfaction with one's own path. Comparison destabilizes emotional equilibrium because it redirects focus from intrinsic progress to external measurement. Positive energy grows through self-referenced evaluation, assessing current performance against personal standards and previous versions of oneself. This orientation restores agency. Emotional resilience is strengthened through exposure, not avoidance. Shielding oneself from all discomfort weakens capacity to tolerate stress. However, exposure must be intentional and bounded. Engaging in difficult conversations with preparation, seeking feedback constructively, and pursuing new skills despite initial incompetence build competence. Each successful navigation of discomfort recalibrates the nervous system's threat perception. Over time, Situations that once triggered anxiety produce manageable alertness instead. Energy previously consumed by avoidance becomes available for growth. Midlife also introduces awareness of mortality and limitation. Physical changes, the aging of parents, and the shifting dynamics of career horizons can evoke subtle existential anxiety. Ignoring this awareness intensifies it. Engaging with it thoughtfully transforms it. Reflecting on limitation often clarifies priorities. It reduces tolerance for trivial conflict. It encourages investment in meaningful relationships. When energy is directed toward what genuinely matters, vitality increases. Diffuse ambition, by contrast, fragments focus. One of the most stabilizing emotional practices is gratitude grounded in specificity. Generic gratitude statements have limited impact. Specific recognition of concrete elements, mentors who shaped judgment, colleagues who offered loyalty, moments of health and competence, anchors attention in reality rather than abstraction. The nervous system responds to specificity with authenticity. Positive energy, then, is not exuberance. It is emotional order. It is the capacity to feel fully without becoming overwhelmed. It is the ability to experience disappointment without adopting a narrative of defeat. It is the willingness to confront resentment and release it for strategic benefit. When emotional processing aligns with disciplined thinking, internal friction decreases. The mind no longer battles unacknowledged feeling. The body no longer remains in chronic defense. Interactions become less reactive. Voice tone stabilizes. Patience extends. This integration produces a subtle but powerful shift in presence. Others sense groundedness. Conversations feel measured. Leadership feels composed rather than urgent. In personal relationships, warmth replaces tension. As you continue through this book, observe where emotional residue may still be influencing your reactions. Notice patterns of disproportionate response. Identify areas where boundaries are unclear or grievances remain active. Each insight represents reclaimed energy. In the next chapter, we will examine how external environments, professional cultures, social networks, and digital ecosystems either reinforce or erode the internal stability you are building, and how deliberate environmental design protects your positive energy over the long term. Chapter 3. While disciplined thinking and emotional integration form the internal foundation of positive energy, the environments in which you operate either reinforce or undermine that foundation daily. By midlife, individuals are deeply embedded in multiple ecosystems: professional organizations, family systems, social networks, digital platforms. Each environment exerts subtle pressure on attention, mood, and behavior. Most people underestimate how profoundly context shapes internal state. Human beings are adaptive by design. We calibrate our tone, language, and posture according to surroundings. In constructive environments, this adaptability strengthens cohesion and performance. In chaotic or chronically negative environments, it gradually erodes stability. What begins as temporary adjustment becomes baseline tension. Consider the professional setting. Some workplaces operate on urgency as a permanent condition. Deadlines are constant, communication is reactive, and recognition is scarce. In such climates, vigilance becomes normalized. Even when no immediate crisis exists, the body remains prepared for one. Over time, this state shifts from situational to chronic. Chronic activation of the stress response has measurable consequences. Cognitive flexibility narrows. Memory becomes selective toward threat. Creativity declines because experimentation feels risky. The individual may continue to function competently, but the cost is internal depletion. Positive energy cannot thrive in perpetual defense. This does not mean one must abandon demanding environments. It means one must learn to differentiate between external urgency and internal urgency. External deadlines may be unavoidable. Internal panic is optional. Developing this distinction requires conscious pause before response, a brief delay, 3 deliberate breaths before replying to a charged message. Signals to the nervous system that threat assessment is underway, not immediate danger. Over time, this practice decouples external stimuli from automatic internal escalation. Social environments exert similar influence. Repeated exposure to conversations centered on complaint, cynicism, or comparison subtly shifts perception. The brain, efficient in pattern recognition, begins to anticipate negativity. Even neutral events are interpreted through a lens of dissatisfaction. Many adults maintain long-standing relationships rooted in shared history rather than shared growth. Loyalty is admirable, yet prolonged exposure to stagnant perspectives can constrain development. Energy diminishes when interaction consistently reinforces limitation. The solution is not abrupt severance of connections, but intentional diversification. Surrounding yourself with individuals who demonstrate composure, curiosity, and accountability recalibrates expectations. Observing how others navigate pressure expands behavioral repertoire. Positive energy is contagious when modeled consistently. Family systems present a distinct challenge. Roles established decades earlier often persist unconsciously. You may still respond to a sibling as the younger competitor, or to a parent as the compliant child, even though circumstances have changed. These ingrained dynamics can trigger regressions in tone and posture. Awareness is essential. Notice when your reactions feel disproportionate within family contexts. Identify whether you are responding to present reality or to historical patterns. Mature, positive energy allows you to maintain adult composure even when others unconsciously attempt to reenact earlier roles. Digital environments deserve particular scrutiny. The modern adult spends substantial time consuming information designed to capture attention rather than cultivate clarity. Algorithms prioritize emotional intensity, outrage, fear, envy, because such states increase engagement. Prolonged exposure fragments attention and elevates baseline anxiety. The nervous system does not fully distinguish between immediate threat and mediated threat. Continuous exposure to alarming headlines or adversarial commentary keeps the stress response partially activated. Sleep becomes lighter, patience shortens. Thought patterns skew toward pessimism. Intentional limitation of digital intake is therefore not avoidance. It is strategic energy preservation. Curate information sources carefully. Allocate defined periods for news consumption rather than constant monitoring. Replace passive scrolling with deliberate reading that expands understanding rather than inflames reaction. Physical environment also shapes psychological energy. Workspace organization, lighting, noise levels, and visual clutter influence cognitive load. A disordered physical setting increases background stress because the brain continually processes unresolved stimuli. Order, by contrast, reduces unnecessary input, allowing focus to concentrate on priority tasks. This principle extends to the home. A calm, structured domestic environment signals safety to the nervous system. Rituals, consistent meal times, evening reflection, technology boundaries create predictability. Predictability reduces cognitive strain, conserving energy for complex decision-making elsewhere. Midlife responsibilities often fragment attention across domains. Work concerns intrude into family time. Family concerns intrude into professional focus. Without deliberate transitions, mental residue travels from one context to another. Establishing brief transition rituals, such as a short walk after work or a few minutes of silence before entering the home, create psychological separation. These rituals communicate closure to the mind, preventing cumulative overload. Another environmental factor frequently overlooked is language culture. In some settings, exaggeration and alarm are normalized. Phrases like, "This is a disaster," or "Everything is falling apart," are used casually. Repeated exposure to such language elevates perceived threat. Replacing exaggerated language with precise description stabilizes interpretation. "This project is behind schedule," invites action. "This is a disaster," invites panic. You have influence over the language you use and tolerate. By modeling measured vocabulary, you subtly shift group tone. Over time, colleagues and family members adjust in response to consistent composure. It is equally important to recognize that not all discomfort indicates a toxic environment. Growth environments often feel challenging because they stretch capability. The distinction lies in outcome. Does the environment, despite difficulty, foster skill development and mutual respect? Or does it perpetuate chronic insecurity and devaluation? Positive energy flourishes in environments that demand effort while preserving dignity. When environmental misalignment becomes clear, strategic decisions may be necessary. These decisions are rarely impulsive. They involve assessing long-term cost to energy and health. Remaining in a setting that consistently erodes stability may appear practical in the short term, but accumulates invisible expense. Designing your environment deliberately is an act of maturity. It reflects recognition that energy is finite and valuable. It also acknowledges that influence is reciprocal. As you adjust your environment, you alter how others respond to you. For instance, establishing clear response windows for communication often reduces expectation of immediate availability. Colleagues adapt. Family members adjust to designated uninterrupted time. Initial resistance may occur, but consistency reshapes norms. Energy protection also involves selective engagement. Not every debate requires participation. Not every opinion warrants correction. Mature confidence distinguishes between issues that demand action and those that merely invite distraction. Silence, when intentional, conserves strength. As environmental awareness increases, you may notice that certain spaces or individuals consistently elevate your clarity. These are energy-neutral or energy-positive contexts. Prioritize them. Schedule time within them intentionally. Reinforcement accelerates integration of the internal practices developed in previous chapters. Positive energy is not sustained solely through introspection. It is sustained through alignment between inner discipline and outer context. When your environment supports reflection, measured response, and constructive language, internal stability strengthens more rapidly. At this stage of life, you are not merely a participant in environments. You are a contributor. Your presence influences tone. When you enter a room with steadiness, conversations moderate. When you react proportionately, others recalibrate. Influence expands quietly but significantly. It is in conversation, leadership, negotiation, parenting, and partnership that internal discipline reveals its true quality. A person may believe they are calm, self-aware, and emotionally regulated, yet their communication patterns will either confirm or contradict that belief within moments. By midlife, communication habits are deeply ingrained. Tone, pacing, interruption tendencies, and defensive reflexes have been practiced thousands of times. They feel natural, yet what feels natural is not always effective. The refinement of positive energy requires deliberate attention to how internal states translate into external behavior. The first principle of energetically intelligent communication is containment. Containment does not mean emotional suppression. It means the ability to hold an emotion without allowing it to spill into unintended areas. When frustration arises in a meeting, containment allows you to address the specific issue rather than generalized dissatisfaction. Without containment, minor irritation expands into broad criticism. Containment signals strength. Others experience it as reliability. In professional settings, individuals who consistently demonstrate containment become trusted with greater responsibility. In personal relationships, they become stabilizing forces during conflict. Voice tone carries more energetic information than words themselves. A sentence spoken with tension transmits anxiety even if the content is neutral. A request delivered with impatience generates resistance even if it is reasonable. Because tone often operates unconsciously, awareness is essential. Recording your own presentations or paying attention to how others physically respond during conversation can provide insight. Do shoulders tighten? Does eye contact diminish? These cues reflect energetic transmission. Listening is equally influential. Many adults listen to respond rather than to understand. While another person speaks, the mind prepares rebuttal or solution. This habit shortens patience and increases misinterpretation. Intentional listening, allowing full expression before formulating response, reduces defensive escalation. It also conserves energy because fewer misunderstandings require repair. Midlife often brings leadership, formally or informally. Leadership is less about authority and more about emotional climate management. Teams and families unconsciously mirror the most stable individual present. If you maintain composure during uncertainty, collective anxiety decreases. If you display volatility, instability multiplies. This mirroring is rooted in neurobiology. Human beings possess mirror neuron systems that replicate observed emotional states. Calm is contagious. So is agitation. Recognizing this dynamic transforms responsibility. Your internal regulation is not solely personal. It is relational. Clarity is another component of positive energetic influence. Ambiguity generates tension. When expectations are unclear, individuals speculate. Speculation often trends negative because uncertainty activates threat detection. Clear instructions, defined timelines, and transparent reasoning reduce unnecessary mental strain within groups. Clarity also applies to boundaries and communication. Passive-aggressive expression drains energy because it requires concealment. Direct yet respectful articulation preserves integrity. For example, stating, "I need additional time to review this before committing," prevents internal resentment and external confusion. Conflict is inevitable in mature life. The manner in which conflict is approached distinguishes reactive energy from positive energy. Reactive conflict seeks victory. Positive energy seeks resolution. This shift in objective changes tone immediately. Instead of accumulating evidence against the other party, you begin identifying shared goals. The nervous system responds differently when collaboration replaces competition. Timing influences energy exchange as well. Addressing sensitive issues when emotions are already elevated compounds tension. Strategic delay, agreeing to revisit a conversation after reflection, often prevents unnecessary damage. This pause is not avoidance, it is preparation. In personal relationships, positive energy expresses itself through consistency. Grand gestures are memorable but rare. Daily steadiness builds trust. Responding predictably, following through on commitments, and maintaining proportionate reactions create emotional safety. Safety allows deeper dialogue and reduces defensive posturing. It is important to examine how humor functions within your communication. Humor can relieve tension and strengthen connection. It can also deflect vulnerability or disguise criticism. Assess whether your humor invites shared enjoyment or subtly reinforces distance. Mature positive energy uses humor to unify rather than to shield. Nonverbal signals require equal attention. Posture, eye contact, and physical orientation communicate availability. Leaning slightly forward signals engagement. Crossed arms and diverted gaze signal withdrawal. These cues influence how messages are received. When nonverbal and verbal messages align, credibility increases. Energy is also shaped by the questions you ask. Questions direct focus. Asking, "Why is this always a problem?" anchors attention and frustration. Asking, "What would resolve this effectively?" redirects energy toward solution. Habitual question patterns either entrench negativity or stimulate progress. In leadership contexts, recognition amplifies positive energy. Recognition need not be exaggerated. Specific acknowledgement of effort or improvement strengthens motivation and reduces defensiveness. When individuals feel seen accurately, their own internal energy stabilizes. As a leader or parent, your recognition recalibrates collective mood. Silence, used intentionally, is powerful. Many adults feel compelled to fill conversational gaps. Yet silence allows reflection and demonstrates confidence. It prevents impulsive remarks that may require later correction. In negotiation, silence often invites additional information from the other party, preserving energy that would otherwise be spent arguing. Midlife communication also intersects with identity. Individuals at this stage may feel pressure to defend expertise. Admitting uncertainty can feel risky. However, transparent acknowledgement of limits often increases respect. It signals security rather than weakness. Positive energy is comfortable with incomplete knowledge because it trusts capacity to learn. Apology, when warranted, restores energy quickly. Resistance to apology prolongs tension and consumes cognitive resources. A concise acknowledgement without excessive justification resets interaction. The ability to apologize without collapse reflects emotional maturity. As you refine communication habits, you will notice shifts in response patterns around you. Conversations become shorter yet more productive. Conflicts resolve faster. Repetition decreases because clarity increases. Energy previously spent repairing misunderstandings becomes available for innovation and growth. It is crucial to understand that positive energetic influence does not require charisma. It requires congruence. When thoughts, emotions, and words align, communication feels authentic. Authenticity reduces suspicion and strengthens connection. Over time, this alignment builds reputation. You become known not merely for competence, but for steadiness. Opportunities gravitate toward individuals whose presence reduces volatility. Families rely more heavily on members who maintain proportion. Influence expands organically. Chapter 4. Positive energy becomes fully visible in interaction. It is in conversation, leadership, negotiation, parenting, and partnership that internal discipline reveals its true quality. A person may believe they are calm, self-aware, and emotionally regulated, yet their communication patterns will either confirm or contradict that belief within moments. By midlife, communication habits are deeply ingrained. Tone, pacing, interruption tendencies, and defensive reflexes have been practiced thousands of times. They feel natural. Yet what feels natural is not always effective. The refinement of positive energy requires deliberate attention to how internal states translate into external behavior. The first principle of energetically intelligent communication is containment. Containment does not mean emotional suppression. It means the ability to hold an emotion without allowing it to spill into unintended areas. When frustration arises in a meeting, containment allows you to address the specific issue rather than generalized dissatisfaction. Without containment, minor irritation expands into broad criticism. Containment signals strength. Others experience it as reliability. In professional settings, individuals who consistently demonstrate containment become trusted with greater responsibility. In personal relationships, they become stabilizing forces during conflict. Voice tone carries more energetic information than words themselves. A sentence spoken with tension transmits anxiety even if the content is neutral. A request delivered with impatience generates resistance even if it is reasonable. Because tone often operates unconsciously, awareness is essential. Recording your own presentations or paying attention to how others physically respond during conversation can provide insight. Do shoulders tighten? Does eye contact diminish? These cues reflect energetic transmission. Listening is equally influential. Many adults listen to respond rather than to understand. While another person speaks, the mind prepares rebuttal or solution. This habit shortens patience and increases misinterpretation. Intentional listening, allowing full expression before formulating response, reduces defensive escalation. It also conserves energy because fewer misunderstandings require repair. Midlife often brings leadership, formally or informally. Leadership is less about authority and more about emotional climate management. Teams and families unconsciously mirror the most stable individual present. If you maintain composure during uncertainty, collective anxiety decreases. If you display volatility, instability multiplies. This mirroring is rooted in neurobiology. Human beings possess mirror neuron systems that replicate observed emotional states. Calm is contagious, so is agitation. Recognizing this dynamic transforms responsibility. Your internal regulation is not solely personal, it is relational. Clarity is another component of positive, energetic influence. Ambiguity generates tension. When expectations are unclear, individuals speculate. Speculation often trends negative because uncertainty activates threat detection. Clear instructions, defined timelines, and transparent reasoning reduce unnecessary mental strain within groups. Passive-aggressive expression drains energy because it requires concealment. Direct yet respectful articulation preserves integrity. For example, stating, "I need additional time to review this before committing," prevents internal resentment and external confusion. Conflict is inevitable in mature life. The manner in which conflict is approached distinguishes reactive energy from positive energy. Reactive conflict seeks victory. Positive energy seeks resolution. This shift in objective changes tone immediately. Instead of accumulating evidence against the other party, you begin identifying shared goals. The nervous system responds differently when collaboration replaces competition. Timing influences energy exchange as well. Addressing sensitive issues when emotions are already elevated compounds tension. Strategic delay, agreeing to revisit a conversation after reflection, often prevents unnecessary damage. This pause is not avoidance, it is preparation. In personal relationships, positive energy expresses itself through consistency. Grand gestures are memorable but rare. Daily steadiness builds trust. Responding predictably, following through on commitments, and maintaining proportionate reactions create emotional safety. Safety allows deeper dialogue and reduces defensive posturing. It is important to examine how humor functions within your communication. Humor can relieve tension and strengthen connection. It can also deflect vulnerability or disguise criticism. Assess whether your humor invites shared enjoyment or subtly reinforces distance. Mature positive energy uses humor to unify rather than to shield. Nonverbal signals require equal attention. Posture, eye contact, and physical orientation communicate availability. Leaning slightly forward signals engagement. Crossed arms and diverted gaze signal withdrawal. These cues influence how messages are received. When nonverbal and verbal messages align, credibility increases. Energy is also shaped by the questions you ask. Questions direct focus. Asking, "Why is this always a problem?" anchors attention and frustration. Asking, "What would resolve this effectively?" redirects energy toward solution. Habitual question patterns either entrench negativity or stimulate progress. In leadership contexts, recognition amplifies positive energy. Recognition need not be exaggerated. Specific acknowledgement of effort or improvement strengthens motivation and reduces defensiveness. When individuals feel seen accurately, their own internal energy stabilizes. As a leader or parent, your recognition recalibrates collective mood. Silence, used intentionally, is powerful. Many adults feel compelled to fill conversational gaps. Yet silence allows reflection and demonstrates confidence. It prevents impulsive remarks that may require later correction. In negotiation, silence often invites additional information from the other party, preserving energy that would otherwise be spent arguing. Midlife communication also intersects with identity. Individuals at this stage may feel pressure to defend expertise. Admitting uncertainty can feel risky. However, transparent acknowledgement of limits often increases respect. It signals security rather than weakness. Positive energy is comfortable with incomplete knowledge because it trusts capacity to learn. Apology, when warranted, restores energy quickly. Resistance to apology prolongs tension and consumes cognitive resources. A concise acknowledgement, without excessive justification, resets interaction. The ability to apologize without collapse reflects emotional maturity. As you refine communication habits, you will notice shifts in response patterns around you. Conversations become shorter yet more productive. Conflicts resolve faster. Repetition decreases because clarity increases. Energy previously spent repairing misunderstandings becomes available for innovation and growth. It is crucial to understand that positive energetic influence does not require charisma. It requires congruence. When thoughts, emotions, and words align, communication feels authentic. Authenticity reduces suspicion and strengthens connection. Over time, this alignment builds reputation. You become known not merely for competence, but for steadiness. Opportunities gravitate toward individuals whose presence reduces volatility. Families rely more heavily on members who maintain proportion. Influence expands organically. In the next chapter, we will examine how personal discipline, habits, routines, and daily structures either sustain or erode the communicative and emotional gains you are building. Positive energy is reinforced not only in moments of interaction, but in the quiet architecture of everyday practice. Insight creates awareness, but habit creates stability. By midlife, most individuals are not lacking knowledge. They understand the importance of health, reflection, communication, and emotional regulation. What determines consistency, however, is daily architecture. The quality of your routines determines the durability of your energy. Many adults in the 35-50 range operate in reactive cycles. Mornings begin with digital stimulation, emails, notifications, headlines before the mind has stabilized. The day proceeds through meetings, obligations, and interruptions. Evenings collapse into fatigue rather than intentional recovery. Weeks blend together. There is effort, but little renewal. This pattern does not fail because of weakness. It fails because it lacks deliberate structure. Positive energy requires predictable anchors throughout the day. Anchors are small, repeatable practices that regulate attention and physiology. They are not elaborate rituals requiring hours. They are concise, disciplined acts performed consistently. The first anchor is the opening of the day. The initial 30 minutes after waking influence cognitive tone disproportionately. When the mind is immediately exposed to external demands, stress chemistry activates before clarity has formed. By contrast, beginning with silence, measured breathing, or reflective reading establishes internal orientation before external engagement begins. This does not require extended meditation. Even 5 minutes of deliberate stillness recalibrates the nervous system. The objective is not detachment from responsibility, but preparation for it. Physical movement is equally critical. The body is not separate from mental energy. Moderate daily movement improves mood regulation, cognitive flexibility, and stress tolerance. In midlife, metabolism shifts and recovery may require more attention, but consistent movement remains non-negotiable. It signals vitality to the brain and interrupts sedentary tension accumulation. Sleep must be treated as foundational, not optional. Chronic sleep deprivation amplifies negative interpretation and reduces impulse control. Many adults normalize restricted sleep as evidence of dedication. In reality, it compromises judgment and emotional containment. Protecting sleep schedules, limiting late-night digital stimulation, and establishing wind-down routines preserve clarity. Nutrition also influences energetic baseline. Irregular meals, excessive caffeine, and high sugar intake destabilize mood. Energy spikes are followed by crashes, increasing irritability and reducing patience. A stable nutritional rhythm supports stable emotional tone. Beyond physical foundations, cognitive discipline requires scheduling. Without scheduled reflection, days remain reactive. Allocating even 15 minutes in the evening to review decisions, interactions, and emotional responses enhances learning. This review is not self-criticism. It is calibration. Identify where composure was maintained and where it faltered. Adjust intentionally for the following day. Time blocking is another powerful tool. When tasks are grouped into focused intervals, attention deepens. Multitasking fragments cognition and drains energy because the brain expends effort switching contexts. Concentrated work followed by defined breaks preserves stamina. Breaks themselves must be intentional. Passive scrolling during breaks often increases cognitive clutter. Instead, brief walks, stretching, or quiet breathing restore mental clarity. The goal is genuine recovery rather than distraction. Midlife often brings cumulative responsibility, making it tempting to accept every request. However, overcommitment is one of the fastest routes to energetic depletion. Disciplined scheduling includes refusal. Declining tasks that do not align with priority preserves quality in areas that do. Prioritization requires clarity of long-term objectives. Without defined direction, daily actions scatter. Energy dissipates across competing goals. Periodic review of professional and personal aims ensures alignment between routine and purpose. When daily effort connects to meaningful direction, motivation stabilizes. Ritual closure is as important as ritual initiation. Concluding the workday with deliberate disengagement prevents spillover into personal time. This may involve reviewing completed tasks, outlining the next day's priorities, and consciously setting work aside. The act of closure signals safety to the mind, allowing relaxation. Technology boundaries deserve explicit attention. Constant accessibility erodes recovery. Establishing device-free periods, particularly before sleep, protects mental stillness. Informing colleagues and family of these boundaries sets expectation and reduces friction. Another sustaining practice is strategic solitude. In midlife, individuals are frequently surrounded by demand: clients, colleagues, children, partners. Solitude is not isolation, it is replenishment. Time alone for reading, thinking, or quiet activity restores coherence. Without it, identity can become fragmented across roles. Learning should remain continuous. Exposure to new ideas stimulates cognitive growth and counters stagnation. Narratives. This does not require formal education. It may involve books, lectures, or skill acquisition. Learning reaffirms capability and adaptability, strengthening energetic confidence. Financial order contributes significantly to psychological stability. Unexamined financial stress operates as background anxiety. Regular review of budgets, savings, and long-term planning reduces uncertainty. Even incremental improvement generates a sense of control, conserving mental energy. Physical environment maintenance also falls within routine discipline. Organized spaces reduce distraction. Clean, well-lit work areas signal intention. Small acts of order accumulate into a broader sense of control. It is important to acknowledge that discipline initially feels restrictive. However, over time, it creates freedom. When core routines are automated, cognitive resources are released for creativity and strategic thinking. Decision fatigue decreases because foundational choices, sleep time, work blocks, exercise, are predetermined. Consistency is more powerful than intensity. Dramatic but unsustainable changes often collapse within weeks, reinforcing self-doubt. Moderate adjustments maintained for months reshape baseline energy reliably. One overlooked aspect of discipline is celebration of incremental progress. Acknowledging consistent adherence to routine reinforces identity as a stable individual. Identity shapes behavior. When you view yourself as disciplined, you act accordingly with less internal negotiation. Unexpected disruption will occur. Illness, urgent professional demands, family crises, these are inevitable. The purpose of routine is not rigidity, but resilience. When disruption subsides, return to structure promptly rather than abandoning it entirely. Positive energy thrives where chaos is minimized. Structure does not eliminate spontaneity, it creates a platform for it. When essential domains, health, reflection, planning are secure, flexibility becomes safe rather than destabilizing. As daily discipline strengthens, you will notice subtle shifts. Reactivity decreases. Decisions feel less rushed. Emotional fluctuations moderate. Others may comment on increased steadiness without understanding its origin. The origin is repetition. Chapter 6. As stability becomes consistent through disciplined thought, emotional integration, environmental awareness, communication refinement, and structured routine, a broader question emerges. What is this energy ultimately for? Positive energy is not merely for personal comfort. It is not a private luxury reserved for internal peace. In the mature decades of life, energy becomes influence. Influence shapes legacy. By the age of 40 or 50, most individuals have entered roles that extend beyond individual performance. Whether in professional leadership, mentorship, parenting, partnership, or community presence, your internal state affects trajectories other than your own. The steadiness you cultivate today becomes the emotional template others internalize. Legacy is often misunderstood as financial inheritance or public achievement. In reality, legacy is the cumulative psychological impression you leave in the people you consistently interact with. It is the atmosphere associated with your name. It is the memory of how others felt in your presence. Positive energy, sustained over time, creates a legacy of psychological safety and forward movement. In professional environments, individuals who maintain composure under pressure gradually become reference points. When uncertainty escalates, others look toward them instinctively. Not because they have all the answers, but because their nervous system does not amplify chaos. This capacity is rare. In competitive settings where urgency is constant, calm authority distinguishes itself without noise. Such individuals often underestimate their influence because it operates quietly. They may not seek recognition, yet teams align around their steadiness. Younger professionals observe how they handle setbacks. Colleagues notice the absence of panic in their tone. Over years, this pattern builds credibility that no single achievement can replace. Influence built on volatility may generate short-term momentum, but it produces long-term exhaustion. Influence built on positive energy generates durability. It sustains performance across cycles of success and adversity. Within family systems, energetic legacy becomes even more profound. Children, partners, and extended relatives internalize emotional norms through repeated exposure. A household governed by reactivity teaches vigilance. A household governed by proportion teaches resilience. This does not require perfection. Occasional frustration is human. What matters is recovery. When composure returns after disruption, the message transmitted is powerful. Instability is temporary. Regulation is possible. Over time, this becomes a model others adopt. Midlife also presents the opportunity to mentor. Mentorship is not limited to formal programs. It may occur in informal guidance, advice offered to colleagues, or example set through consistent behavior. Younger individuals often seek not dramatic inspiration, but evidence of sustainable success. They observe whether maturity brings bitterness or clarity. They watch for signs of regret or refinement. Your positive energy answers these observations silently. Another dimension of legacy involves decision-making under ethical pressure. As responsibility increases, so does exposure to complex choices. Positive energy rooted in disciplined thought and emotional integration supports ethical clarity. When internal stability exists, decisions are less likely to be distorted by fear or ego. This integrity becomes part of your long-term impact. Financial and professional achievements are meaningful, yet without energetic integrity, they feel hollow. Conversely, moderate achievements accompanied by psychological steadiness create fulfillment that transcends metrics. Many individuals reach midlife milestones only to discover that external success without internal alignment produces dissatisfaction. Positive energy aligns ambition with values. It encourages pursuit of excellence while preserving health and relationships. It moderates extremes. It prevents identity from attaching solely to status or productivity. As awareness of mortality subtly increases during these decades, perspective sharpens. Time is recognized as finite. This recognition can generate anxiety or clarity. When processed constructively, it refines focus. Trivial conflicts lose significance. Meaningful connection gains priority. Energy becomes more intentional. Contribution becomes central. Contribution may involve professional innovation, community engagement, family investment, or knowledge sharing. The form varies. The principle remains consistent. Positive energy expands when directed outward constructively. Self-preoccupation contracts it. However, contribution must be balanced with renewal. Chronic self-sacrifice leads to depletion, not legacy. Sustainable contribution arises from surplus energy, not exhaustion. Maintaining personal stability ensures that what you give is grounded rather than resentful. Reputation accumulates through repetition. Each interaction adds a small data point to others' perception of you. Over years, these data points form a coherent narrative. Are you remembered as reactive or measured? As generous or guarded? As consistent or unpredictable? These impressions shape opportunities long after specific details are forgotten. Midlife offers the rare advantage of accumulated experience combined with remaining time. Earlier decades often prioritize accumulation of skills, income, recognition. Later decades prioritize consolidation and refinement. The present stage allows recalibration. Patterns that no longer serve can be adjusted deliberately. It is never too late to alter energetic direction. Neural plasticity persists. Emotional habits can be reshaped. Communication styles can be refined. What changes is not chronological age, but conscious intention. Positive energy also influences how you experience success. Without internal stability, achievement quickly gives way to new anxiety. There is always another benchmark, another comparison. With internal stability, achievement is integrated and appreciated without becoming identity's sole anchor. Gratitude deepens at this stage. Not superficial gratitude, but informed appreciation. You recognize the improbability of certain opportunities. You understand the fragility of health and relationships. This awareness infuses daily interactions with quiet reverence. Ultimately, the question becomes not how much energy you possess, but how you steward it. Energy invested wisely compounds. Energy squandered through chronic reactivity dissipates. As you continue developing disciplined thought, processed emotion, supportive environment, refined communication, and structured habit, observe the expanding radius of your influence. Notice how conversations shift. Notice how conflict resolves more quickly. Notice how younger individuals seek your perspective. These are indicators of legacy forming. Chapter 7. Even with disciplined thought, emotional integration, environmental alignment, refined communication, and structured routines, positive energy is not immune to life's inevitable transitions. Midlife is a period marked by flux. Careers evolve, families shift, health changes, social networks transform. Resilience, the capacity to maintain composure and vitality through change, is the bridge that allows positive energy to endure across these fluctuations. Change, by its nature, introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty triggers the nervous system's threat response, even when the transition is ultimately beneficial. A promotion may excite, but it also demands new skills and responsibilities. Children leaving home brings pride, yet also a sudden emptiness in daily structure. Health challenges, minor or significant, produce both physical and psychological adaptation demands. Without deliberate resilience, energy is consumed in rumination, fear, or resistance rather than constructive adaptation. The first principle of long-term resilience is perspective. Perspective is not denial of difficulty. It is accurate framing of circumstances relative to capacity. For instance, facing a new professional challenge, the resilient individual assesses skills, support systems, and prior experience before assigning emotional weight. The brain distinguishes between manageable challenge and existential threat. By assessing objectively, anxiety is contained, energy conserved, and strategy prioritized. Another critical aspect is flexibility of identity. Many midlife adults tie identity tightly to roles, titles, or achievements. When those roles evolve, identity feels threatened. Flexible identity allows a person to navigate shifts without perceiving them as existential loss. Instead, transitions are seen as redefinition rather than disappearance. Energy, previously spent defending status, is available for exploration. Resilience also relies on contingency planning. Anticipating potential changes and preparing for them reduces surprise, which is a significant trigger for stress responses. For instance, financial planning, health monitoring, or career skill diversification provide security. Preparation is not obsessive control. It is strategic readiness, producing confidence and energy preservation. Another dimension of enduring energy is relational support. Human beings are social by design. Even the most disciplined individual relies on networks for affirmation, advice, and emotional buffering. Sustaining positive energy requires nurturing relationships with those who provide constructive feedback, support calmness, and model composure. Energy drains occur when relationships demand chronic defense, validation, or conflict. Identifying high and low-quality relational connections is therefore vital for resilience. Adaptation also requires cognitive reframing. Midlife transitions often challenge expectations and long-held assumptions. Reframing involves recognizing that change does not signal failure, but an opportunity for recalibration. A career setback may expose areas for development. A relational shift may reveal neglected priorities. A health concern may inspire deeper self-care. By actively reframing experiences, the mind converts potential energy drains into growth opportunities. Persistence is equally critical. Resilience does not imply absence of struggle. It implies continuation despite struggle. Psychological energy is fortified through repeated practice of recovery from minor setbacks. Each recovery becomes a rehearsal for larger disruptions. Over time, the nervous system becomes calibrated to maintain composure and clarity even in complex circumstances. Emotional granularity enhances resilience. Adults often describe feeling stressed or frustrated, but these broad labels fail to guide constructive response. Identifying specific feelings, disappointment, fear, exhaustion, irritation, creates actionable insight. Emotional labeling reduces intensity and improves decision-making. For instance, recognizing that irritation arises from unmet expectations allows recalibration rather than impulsive reaction. Routine acts as an anchor during transitions. When external circumstances shift, daily structures provide continuity. Exercise, reflection, planning, and sleep rituals create a sense of stability regardless of situational variability. The body and mind register these constants as safe, permitting flexibility elsewhere. Acceptance is another indispensable component. Resilience is not surrender. It is the acknowledgement of reality without unnecessary struggle against immutable conditions. Accepting aging, uncontrollable outcomes, or natural relational changes prevents wasted energy on resistance. Energy can then be redirected toward influence, adaptation, and meaningful action. Mindfulness strengthens this adaptive capacity. Regular practice of conscious awareness, paying attention to present experience without judgment, reduces rumination on past events and anxiety about future uncertainty. Mindfulness exercises the prefrontal cortex to regulate the amygdala's reactive impulses, creating physiological calmness that sustains positive energy. Purpose sustains resilience over the long term. Energy is finite. When invested in meaningful objectives, it replenishes rather than depletes. At midlife, purpose often shifts from accumulation to contribution, from proving oneself to creating lasting impact. Directing attention and effort toward endeavors that align with core values ensures energy is not squandered on trivialities. A key component of this chapter is the understanding that transitions, while challenging, are also accelerants for growth. Individuals who maintain positive energy through change develop heightened self-knowledge, emotional agility, and relational intelligence. These qualities reinforce previous chapters' foundations: clarity in thought, composure in emotion, alignment with environment, excellence in communication, and discipline in routine. Finally, resilience is iterative. Each challenge survived strengthens internal coherence. Each adaptation refines judgment. Energy expands when mastery over small disruptions accumulates into confidence in managing larger ones. Midlife, often perceived as a plateau, can instead become the period of highest energetic mastery if transitions are navigated with intention. Chapter 8. By midlife, the scope of positive energy naturally extends beyond self and immediate circles. What was once a personal pursuit, clarity, composure, resilience, becomes a force that shapes environments, communities, and even cultural norms. Positive energy, when sustained and intentional, is not only an internal asset, but also a social multiplier. The influence of one steady, disciplined, emotionally integrated individual can ripple outward in ways that are subtle, yet profound. Communities, whether professional, familial, or civic, unconsciously mirror the energy of their participants. When you enter a room grounded, observant, and measured, others calibrate accordingly. Decisions become more thoughtful. Conflict escalates less frequently. Collaboration improves. Over time, groups adopt patterns modeled by consistent internal stability. This is particularly significant in midlife, when positions of authority and responsibility often emerge. Leaders, mentors, and even parents function as behavioral templates for younger individuals, shaping expectations, norms, and approaches to challenge. Consider professional environments. Organizations are ecosystems of energy. Teams reflect not only competence, but also collective emotional tone. Midlife professionals who maintain composure during high-pressure scenarios model effective regulation. Younger colleagues, consciously or unconsciously, observe the embodiment of calm problem-solving, learning through imitation rather than instruction. Decisions made with emotional stability carry less reactive bias and greater long-term efficacy. Over time, these patterns elevate organizational culture, encouraging resilience, collaboration, and strategic focus. In families, positive energy fosters intergenerational benefit. Children, spouses, and extended family members absorb emotional and behavioral cues from those they interact with daily. When a parent navigates setbacks without panic, communicates without defensiveness, and responds without undue criticism, the family system internalizes composure as normative behavior. This does not mean shielding others from all discomfort. Rather, it demonstrates constructive engagement with challenge. Over years, these models solidify into implicit rules for interaction. Children learn emotional regulation not through lectures, but by observing steady behavior. Social networks, outside immediate family and professional contexts, are similarly influenced. Friendships, mentorships, and community groups amplify or diminish energetic patterns. When a midlife individual engages with social circles intentionally, maintaining calm, offering thoughtful insight, supporting positive action, they generate a magnetic effect. Conversations shift from complaint and comparison toward solution-oriented dialogue. Collective tension decreases, and the social environment itself becomes a reinforcement of positive energy. Broader societal impact emerges when repeated individual influence scales across multiple spheres. Cultural norms are not created in a vacuum. They accumulate from countless individual interactions. Small, consistent demonstrations of composure, accountability, and solution-focused thinking gradually shift expectations and behavior. A person who routinely demonstrates respect, clarity, and emotional stability sets a precedent for professional integrity, relational civility, and ethical decision-making. These contributions, though subtle, accumulate into enduring cultural influence. philanthropy, and civic engagement further amplify energetic influence. When midlife individuals contribute time, knowledge, or resources to causes aligned with values, their positive energy enters public consciousness. Effective contribution requires focus and intention. Shallow or reactive involvement dissipates energy. Deliberate, sustained engagement creates momentum. Over time, such contributions generate networks of aligned action, reinforcing both personal and collective resilience. Communication, as discussed in earlier chapters, becomes a tool of social architecture. Public speaking, mentorship, and written expression extend internal stability outward. A well-considered speech, an insightful article, or a calm presence in debate transmits modeled energy to larger audiences. Influence grows not merely through authority or volume, but through congruence between thought, emotion, and expression. People respond to consistency more than charisma, to reliability more than dramatics. Energy projection in societal contexts is also enhanced by ethical clarity. Midlife often presents situations where moral stakes are high: business decisions, familial obligations, community interventions. Internal stability allows evaluation of options without fear-driven distortion. Actions taken from clarity and principle resonate far more than those driven by anxiety, ambition, or reactive impulse. Societal influence, therefore, is maximized when ethical alignment supports emotional and cognitive integrity. Mentorship is a primary vehicle of societal impact. Knowledge alone does not transmit stability. The mentor who embodies positive energy communicates principles through presence. Advice accompanied by composure, patience, and perspective is internalized differently than directives issued from anxiety or urgency. Through mentoring, individuals multiply their effect. One well-modeled approach propagates through multiple downstream recipients, creating an expanding web of influence. Innovation, too, benefits from sustained positive energy. Creativity flourishes where the mind is not continuously occupied with internal turbulence. Midlife professionals who preserve composure, clarity, and structured routines are better positioned to generate insights that impact industry, policy, or community development. Their presence stabilizes collaborative efforts, ensuring that ideas are explored rather than derailed by reactive conflict. Equally important is the notion of intergenerational legacy beyond immediate family. Schools, professional associations, and civic institutions serve as platforms where energetic patterns can be transmitted to wider populations. Leading by example in ethics, emotional regulation, and disciplined action indirectly shapes values, priorities, and behavior of countless individuals who may never meet the original influencer personally. Energy, therefore, multiplies across networks. Finally, positive energy in societal contexts demands sustainability. Influence is diminished when the individual is depleted, reactive, or inconsistent. Returning to the principles of personal discipline, structured routines, and emotional integration ensures that outward energy is abundant rather than borrowed from exhaustion. Social contribution, like personal mastery, is most effective when it flows from surplus vitality rather than deficit. The midlife years are uniquely positioned for this expansive impact. Wisdom, experience, and accumulated insight converge with remaining time and opportunity. Energy cultivated internally through clarity of thought, emotional integration, supportive environment, refined communication, and disciplined habit becomes a platform for external effect. Through professional excellence, mentorship, relational steadiness, civic engagement, and ethical action, the positive energy you maintain radiates, influencing systems, shaping culture, and leaving a tangible legacy. Chapter 9. The Mastery of Self and Legacy. After cultivating disciplined thought, emotional integration, supportive environments, refined communication, Structured routines, resilience through transitions, and societal influence. The final frontier of positive energy is mastery over self. The alignment of perception, belief, and action into a coherent, purposeful identity. Positive energy is not merely what you project externally, it is also how you inhabit your inner world. The stories you tell yourself about your worth, ability, and potential determine the sustainability and reach of everything else you have built. From early adulthood, humans are conditioned by external narratives, family expectations, societal pressures, cultural norms. By midlife, these narratives have crystallized, shaping internal dialogue. Some of these messages are empowering. You are capable. You can navigate challenge. Your contributions matter. Others are limiting. You are not enough. You must always perform. Change is dangerous. Left unchecked, limiting narratives subtly erode energy, influencing thought patterns, emotional responses, and ultimately behavior. Mastery begins with awareness. Observe the internal commentary without judgment. Notice recurring phrases that trigger tension, self-doubt, or defensiveness. Awareness alone is transformative. The mind cannot change what it cannot perceive. By shining a light on these narratives, you gain the first opportunity to edit them intentionally. The second step is critical examination. Assess whether the narrative is factually accurate, constructive, and aligned with your values. Does it reflect reality or interpretation filtered through fear or past experience? For example, the thought, "I am too old to learn new skills," is often a misinterpretation of temporary discomfort. Challenging and reframing such thoughts converts internal resistance into energy rather than drain. Reframing is the third principle. Replace limiting narratives with empowering alternatives that maintain realism. "I am too old to learn" becomes, "I have decades of experience that accelerate learning." Challenges may take time, but progress is inevitable. This reframing preserves credibility with yourself while redirecting energy toward growth rather than stagnation. Internal narrative mastery also requires alignment with action. Positive statements alone are insufficient if behavior contradicts them. Integrity between thought, word, and deed multiplies energetic impact. Each deliberate, aligned action reinforces self-belief, gradually reshaping identity. Conversely, repeated contradictions between belief and action create internal tension, subtly dissipating energy. Self-compassion is indispensable in this process. Midlife often brings reflection on past mistakes, missed opportunities, or unfulfilled ambitions. Harsh self-criticism saps energy and constricts perspective. Self-compassion does not excuse avoidance. It provides space for acknowledgement and recalibration. It allows you to learn from the past without carrying its weight unnecessarily into the present. Reflection and journaling are practical tools for internal mastery. Writing crystallizes thought, providing clarity and accountability. Regular reflection surfaces unconscious patterns, emotional residue, and recurring narratives. Over time, journaling becomes a dialogue between current self and aspirational self, reinforcing alignment and self-awareness. Purpose is the linchpin of sustained energy. Midlife offers a unique vantage point, accumulated experience, broader perspective, and remaining years for contribution. Purpose transforms abstract energy into focused impact. It channels effort toward meaningful objectives rather than scattered activity. Individuals with clearly articulated purpose navigate stress with proportionality, engage challenges with intention, and inspire others through authenticity. Mindset integration enhances this mastery. Growth-oriented mindset embraces learning, resilience, and adaptation. Fixed or scarcity mindset limits energy by generating unnecessary fear, comparison, and defensiveness. Aligning mindset with positive energy ensures that challenges become opportunities for refinement rather than triggers for depletion. The final element of mastery is acceptance of impermanence. Positive energy is not about controlling every outcome or achieving perfection. It is about consistent presence, proportionate response, and intentional direction. Accepting that life unfolds with unpredictability frees energy from fruitless resistance. You focus instead on influence, contribution, and growth within the parameters you can shape. Legacy, in this context, becomes inseparable from internal mastery. The energy you project outward, the resilience you demonstrate, the calm you maintain, the guidance you provide, all are rooted in your internal narrative. When perception, belief, and action align, your impact is magnified, relationships deepen, and communities thrive. This is the apex of positive energy, a life where internal coherence produces external resonance, where self-mastery and societal influence coexist in harmony. Positive energy is cumulative. It is the result of decades of conscious refinement. Each chapter of life contributes to the foundation. Each practice reinforces the next. Mastery of self is not a final destination, but a lifelong process of observation, recalibration, and alignment. It ensures that the energy you cultivate is durable, adaptable, and profoundly generative. In these final reflections, recognize that your journey toward positive energy is both personal and universal. By investing in clarity of thought, emotional integration, intentional environment, effective communication, disciplined routines, resilience through change, societal influence, and mastery of self, you achieve more than personal peace. You cultivate a force that shapes your world, enriches the lives of those around you, and leaves a lasting imprint on the collective human experience. This is the culmination of positive energy, a life lived with purpose, presence, and power. Not loud, dramatic, or fleeting, but steady, enduring, and profoundly transformative. The energy you build today is the legacy you leave tomorrow. It is visible in your interactions, remembered in your influence, and felt long after individual moments have passed. You now possess a blueprint, not a rigid formula, but a guiding architecture. The choice to inhabit it fully is yours. Each day, each interaction, each moment of reflection becomes an opportunity to expand, refine, and express the positive energy within. When cultivated consciously, this energy is limitless, sustaining you, inspiring others, and echoing far beyond the boundaries of any single life.